How much time passes between the end of Act 1 of Hamlet and the beginning of Act 2? The time is out of joint. O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. Come on and let the good times roll. We're gonna stay here till we soothe our soul. If it take all night long, it might be 1 o'clock and it might be 3. Time don't mean that much to me. I know that Act 1 of Hamlet covers just over 24 hours. The beginning of Act 1, Scene 1, it's midnight, the guards are out there and they see the ghost. They tell Hamlet about the ghost that morning, and Hamlet says, I will meet you tonight at midnight to see the ghost again. At the end of Act 1, it's midnight and they see the ghost again. So all of Act 1 is just about 24 hours. Now, of course, at the end of Act 1, Hamlet vows to get revenge for his dead father. He vows that he's going to kill his uncle Claudius. Haste me to know it, that I with wings as swift as meditation or the thoughts of love may sweep to my revenge. So Hamlet tells the ghost he's going to do this immediately, swiftly. But he also tells his friend Horatio that he's going to put on an antic disposition. He's going to act crazy as part of his strategy for getting his revenge. And yet, we know that he doesn't get revenge. At the end of Act 1, Hamlet says, the time is out of joint. O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right. The time is out of joint. Normally when one scene ends and then the next scene begins, we think to ourselves, the next day, a couple hours later maybe. Usually these scenes follow one after another. But if we're paying attention to Act 2, we'll notice there's been a big gap of time between Act 1 and Act 2. Act 2 begins with Polonius talking to a very, very minor character named Reynaldo. Polonius is giving Reynaldo notes and money to take to his son Laertes in Paris, France. Now, if you remember in Act 1, we saw the goodbye scene where Polonius gave his son advice, precepts, before he left for Paris. So there's your first clue that some time has passed. Polonius isn't going to send Reynaldo after Laertes if Laertes has only been gone for a day or so. Laertes must have been in Paris for a little while for Polonius to want to send Reynaldo after him with money and notes. The next thing that happens in Act 2 is Ophelia arrives and said she's just had this very strange encounter with Hamlet. I remember when I first read this play, I thought to myself, wow, Hamlet vows revenge. He tells the ghost that he's going to go after his uncle immediately, and then instead he goes and shows up at Ophelia's room and acts all strange. Why did he go there instead of just going directly to confront his uncle? But then I read this scene more carefully, and I realized, no, this scene doesn't happen the next day or immediately after the end of Act 1. Some time has passed. If you remember, in Act 1, Polonius told Ophelia, I don't want you seeing Hamlet anymore. And in Act 2, Polonius asks, what, have you given him any hard words of late? And Ophelia responds, no, my good lord, but as you did command, I did repel his letters and denied his access to me. So enough time has gone by for Ophelia to tell Hamlet, I can't see you anymore. The next clue that some time has passed comes in Scene 2. Polonius goes to the king and queen to tell about Hamlet's odd encounter with Ophelia. But before he gets to that, he's like, wait, the ambassadors have returned from Norway. You should hear them first. You remember in Act 1, in order to prevent the war with Norway, King Claudius dispatched Voltimand and Cornelius as ambassadors to go to Norway, negotiate peace. Well, now they've returned. If you look at the geography of Europe, Denmark is attached to the north of Germany. And to get from Denmark to Norway, you actually have to sail across the sea. Back in Hamlet's days, back in Shakespeare's days, that's going to take some time. So these ambassadors have left the royal castle at Elsinore, gone to the sea, traveled across the sea to Norway's shore, then traveled inland to meet with the King of Norway. And then these ambassadors have left Norway, sailed back across the sea, arrived at the royal castle to report this news. Back in Shakespeare's day, back in Hamlet's day, how long is a trip like that going to take? I don't exactly know the answer to it, but I know it's not going to be done in a matter of days. How much time has passed between Act 1 and Act 2 of Hamlet? Well, number one, enough time that Polonius is thinking to himself, boy, I better send a letter and some money to my son in Paris. Enough time for Ophelia to tell Hamlet, my dad won't let me see you anymore. And enough time for this diplomatic mission to Norway to be completely accomplished. Now we are going to get a more definite answer, but it doesn't come until Act 3, the scene with the play within the play. In the audience, Hamlet is talking to Ophelia, and they have this exchange. Look you how cheerfully my mother looks, and my father died within these 2 hours. Nay, 'tis twice 2 months, my lord. So long? Oh heavens. Died 2 months ago and not forgotten yet. Then there's hope a great man's memory may outlive his life half a year. I don't have any reason to doubt Ophelia. I think she's accurately counting the time. It's twice 2 months since old Hamlet was murdered. In other words, it's about 4 months. Okay. From that comment, we can start to put together a Hamlet timeline. Old Hamlet is murdered by Claudius, and within a month, Claudius has married Gertrude. A little less than a month, not quite 2 months after the death, is the beginning of Act 1, Scene 1 of Hamlet. About 24 hours later, Hamlet himself sees the ghost, learns about the murder, and vows to get revenge swiftly. He also talks about putting on that antic disposition. Unfortunately, this is the point where time goes out of joint. Instead of immediately going to get revenge, he delays. And it's enough of a delay for that diplomatic mission to go from Denmark across the sea to Norway, negotiate peace, return to Denmark, and report. That brings us to this scene the next day, and Ophelia tells us it's been twice 2 months since old Hamlet's death. In other words, what's the answer to my question? How much time has passed in between the end of Act 1 of Hamlet and the beginning of Act 2? Well, according to Ophelia, it's been about 2 months, and that seems to fit when you describe all the other events that have transpired in that time gap. Hamlet promised the ghost that he was going to get his revenge swiftly, but instead it's been about 2 months of an antic disposition crazy act. That leads us to the next question, which has always been a hotly debated one among Shakespearean critics. Why does Hamlet delay?